Now, we're all on tenterhooks about the election. We are all going on and on about the fact that this is a big election year. We're waiting for the announcement about the general election. We thought it might be May. Goodness knows where it's going to be. But there are really important local elections on the scene. And we're delighted to have Anoosh Chakelian from the New Statesman joining Sam and myself to chew through this. Anoosh, local elections are really important because local government is really important. And in fact, local government's really on its knees at the moment. You know, lots of people are really kind of seeing the effects of austerity. And you know, we're not really talking about these local elections. Are they slightly lost because we're all speculating about the general election so much?
Yeah, I think they've been completely lost in the political narrative, haven't they? I mean, all anyone is talking about is what date the general election is going to be, forgetting that we have quite major elections coming up very soon in May. And actually, you know, you've got a number of councils up for election, like you mentioned, but also you've got all the police and crime commissioners in England and Wales, and a bunch of mayoralties, including the London mayoralty and the London Assembly as well. So this is quite a lot of elections. And what's interesting is that the councils, most of the council seats that are up for election in May, were last contested in May 2021. And that's a really interesting time, because I think you'll probably remember that that was the time of the vaccine bounce for the Tories. And it was also the same day that Keir Starmer, or Keir Starmer's Labour, lost Hartlepool to the Tories in that by-election. So it was a real nadir for his leadership. It was a bad time for Labour and actually quite a good time for the Conservatives. So there's a hell of a big fall that the Tories could have from these council seats that were last contested coming up again. So, you know, that could really, really shift the narrative about Rishi Sunak overnight, basically, if it's an absolute bloodbath, which it could be.
I mean, they're expecting to do badly. So I suppose the question is just exactly how badly do they do? There's some councils up, you know, that they've held forever, like Dorset. You know, you can't imagine Dorset not being a Tory council, but it might not be, you know, on the day after the local election. So it's sort of, it's always that sort of game with local elections where it's sort of expectations management and what does bad really look like. They know it's going to be bad, but what's bad enough that it might actually really get the Conservatives properly scared and thinking maybe we do need to ditch Sunak after all.
Yeah, I don't know what the expectations management figures will be. You know, they'll say that they'll lose X number of seats, but
we'll lose all of them. They'll all go.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's probably quite fair.
Yeah, it's probably fair. I mean, they made quite significant gains in these seats last time. So they were 235 seats up, Labour 327 down. So like I said, they've got a big, big ledge to fall from. So even the most assiduous spin from CCHQ might not take in exactly how big the fall could be. And I think that could be a very, very vulnerable moment for Rishi Sunak.
And I think it's also just a really important point just to stop and reflect at how politics has changed in that period of time since those last big elections, and particularly Hartlepool, Anoosh, because you're absolutely right. I remember that so clearly because people were saying, is Keir Starmer going to last as leader? This was meant to be a massive test for him. There was then an attempt to sort of sack Angela Rayner, which resulted in basically Angela Rayner sort of duffing up Keir Starmer and getting like a massive promotion and getting lots of new. And I remember at that point, this feeling of crisis within the Labour Party, and lots of moderates such as myself, you know, being in panic. So thinking, you know, everybody was kind of pinning their hopes on Keir Starmer for this revival. I actually remember messaging Keir Starmer at the time, just saying, this is absolutely terrible. And to be fair, he messaged back saying, this is terrible. I'm not trying to spin it. It is extraordinary, Noosh, about how things have changed in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, they really have. And actually, I think in a way that's caught Labour itself by surprise. Obviously, they sort of rejigged their campaign operation. The leader of the opposition's office got rejigged in that time as well. But really, I mean, it's almost as if, you know, I was speaking to someone who knows what's going on in the leader's office quite well. And they were saying, we were just expecting Keir Starmer to blow the doors off. We weren't expecting him to get into the room. And now it's almost like it's taken them by surprise that they not only could win, but could win quite significantly. And so I think these local elections will give a sort of flavour of how they're going to do. But it will also put pressure on them as well, because that, you know, I mean, your podcast captures very well this power test. They're not necessarily ready for government, and they're going to have a really, really grim inheritance, as Rachel Reeves has been reminding everyone.
And the more obvious it becomes that they are going to win, I think, John Curtis said fairly recently that 99% chance that Labour, Keir Starmer is going to be Prime Minister, and people pay attention to what John Curtis says, the more it becomes inevitable, the more people just start treating them as if they're the government and expecting them to be able to answer all these questions, and sort of start ignoring the Conservatives and their manifesto. And that actually, as you say, that puts real pressure because they don't have much to say yet, and oppositions rarely do.